everybody, welcome back to U.S. History. Today we're doing our first section of notes for unit number 3. Now, this overall unit is going to be talking about how the United States really transferred from being a country in the world to being a major world power with regards to other countries prior to World War One. We'll be talking a lot about imperialism, the colonization of other places by the United States, and a variety of other topics. Prior to watching this video, you should have already completed the Chapter 5 and 6 textbook activity. If you have not already done so, please pause the video and go do that assignment. It is located on Google Classroom. So without further ado, let's dive into your notes. So either pull up the fill-in-the-blank document on your Chromebook or access it on paper, whichever you prefer. So first off, we have to talk about American imperialism. When should the United States intervene in the affairs of other countries? Now, if you're here in class, we're going to be utilizing a think, pair, share. But since you are watching this virtually, just take a minute, pause the video, and think about this question. When should the U.S. intervene in the affairs of other countries? Jot down a couple of ideas in your notes, and next time you see me, feel free to share those with me. So there's a formula to imperialism that we use in terms of describing this period in U.S. history. It's global competition plus modern America equals U.S. expansion. Now, global competition was especially with groups like the European nations and Japan wanting to expand their influence globally. And think about here in the United States, we talked about this last unit, but how much industry and agriculture were booming in the United States. So we had a lot of goods to sell, and we wanted to sell those to people, which led to U.S. expansion. So an increased role in global affairs and intervening in the affairs of other countries made it so the United States very much started to expand. We started to have our first and earliest territories. And eventually, and we'll talk about this a little bit later and next time, when we fought a war, we gained some land from it. So what is imperialism? So this is the policy in which stronger countries extend their economic, political, or military control over weaker territories. At this point in history, much of the world has already been claimed, and at this point, the really only things that weren't claimed were some remote islands in the Pacific, a few spots in Africa, and some in very northern Asia, which were untouched. Now, there was 3 main factors that we talk about that fuel imperialism: a desire for military strength, a thirst for new markets, and a belief in cultural superiority. So if we think back to that, the United States' industries have massively grown. We have a thirst for new markets. We want to expand and sell our goods in more places. We want it to be taken seriously, so hence the growth of our military. And remember, we talked about nativism last time, in which people believed that native-born Americans were culturally superior to everybody else. So imperialism and military strength. There was also a desire for military strength as well. And the U.S. built up our military a lot, especially in terms of the Navy and building some of the first modern battleships that would be used for the next 50 or 60 years. Following this desire for growth, the U.S. Navy became the 3rd largest Navy in the world. And actually, even to this day, the U.S. Navy is one of the largest. Admiral Alfred T. Mahan believed that a modern fleet capable of protecting U.S. business and shipping interests around the world, and that was the major driving factor behind this expansion of the Navy. Now, in terms of the economy and culture, the U.S. needed raw materials for its factories. Again, natural resources do run out over time, so they needed places to get them from. They needed new markets for agricultural and manufactured goods, and the solution to that was foreign trade, because there were certain things being produced here in the United States that they couldn't produce anywhere else. Now, the idea of cultural superiority, there's 2 main ideas behind this. There's racial superiority, and then one that's mostly focusing on the spreading of Christianity and quote-unquote civilization to quote-unquote inferior peoples. That's essentially believing that if they brought Christianity and culture to these quote-unquote savaged people, that they would be saving them. So a little bit on some U.S. expansion. We're talking mostly 1800s to about 1900 for today. We'll talk a lot more about U.S. expansion in a couple of class periods. So in 1867, we acquired Alaska, purchasing it from Russia for 2 cents an acre. This was completed by William Seward, the Secretary of State. And Alaska is actually a pretty rich place for natural resources in terms of timber, minerals, and oil. It did not become a state until 1959. In 1867, also the United States purchased the Midway Islands. Midway Islands will actually play a major role in World War II, so we'll talk a lot more about that a little bit further down the road. And then finally, in 1898, the U.S. annexed Hawaii, and it became a U.S. territory. They built the naval base at Pearl Harbor and also became a state in 1959. Hawaii is actually the only place that the U.S. Expanded to that had a monarchy in it, because Hawaii did have a monarchy system. So when we talk about Hawaii, there was a queen of Hawaii when the United States first annexed the islands. All right, that's it for notes for today. I'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone.